Okay, so we're now recording. I'm now going to share my screen. Sorry, minimize that. The document.
You got the Word document up, Andy. That's what we can see.
Ah, okay, that's good. I was just trying to create a situation on. I work from two screens. I'm just trying to get a situation where I've got you all on one screen and the Word document on another.
Yeah.
Let me just. What's the best way of doing that? I'll just minimize that a second. Apologies for this. Let's go to the minimized version. Grab that, bring that across. Brilliant. Okay, so everyone can see 713, allocate work and check people's performance.
Yep.
Yep. What I've just sent everybody a copy of these documents. I've tried to make them as simple as possible, really. So looking at performance area 1, criteria 1.1 is identify and evaluate the priorities and critical activities in programs or operations and schedules, and devise a plan on how the work will be undertaken. So that criteria is identify and evaluate. So basically what we're looking for there against 1.1 is that you provide evidence that this planning has taken place, and you've sort of identified what are critical activities. So my suggestion there, as you both did last time around, is to provide in that box against 1.1 is then to provide some evidence of planning and a short narrative again alongside it, as you did. So you say, you know, this is evidence number 1, or whatever number evidence you're up to. This is how we plan work. These are the criteria that we take into consideration, and here's the evidence that we've done it. And that short narrative and the evidence will basically cover 1.1. What I've then done to try to make these documents a little bit easier is to then, where it's the knowledge criteria, I've just sort of highlighted them in yellow with the highlighter there, just so that we can sort of chat through and discuss those. Let me just talk about the can I just move that over a second? So criteria 1.2 is explain how to identify priorities and critical activities. So when you're so in effect what you're discussing here is when you're sort of planning work, how do you identify your priorities and critical activities?
If it's critical activities for us, it's 9 times out of 10 it's undertaken during a possession. Okay, Kevin. Yep. So basic, and again, that's a really good example, isn't it? Because your possessions, you know, you've got a very defined time period, haven't you? Where, you know, you've got a very specific time. The work has got to be completed in that time. And I'm presuming as well that for much of the work you'll have programs and plans. I think you've already provided evidence of that. Do you have your critical path on those programs? Not so much with the normal weekend works. If it's a blockade, you might have one, but generally it's normally only really the big Christmas blockades where you might get one.
Okay.
Like each weekend, it's like a standard with James. It'll be the same. You'll get a standard possession on a weekend, and it'll be right. This weekend we've got 12 weekends booked for possessions, and we've got to get the work done in them. But they might not give you a program. You'll just get a drawing with all the areas of brickworks that are required in the tunnel.
Okay, yeah, so that's a great example, that, Kieran. So you now know that work's got to be done over 12 weekends.
Yeah.
How are you planning that so that, you know, at the end of week one, well, you know what you're going to do in week 1, week 2, week 3, and so on. How are you then sort of just monitoring that, you know, at the end of, and sometimes your answers are going to be quite simplistic, absolutely. How do you then monitor at the end of week 1 that you've done what you needed to do, so that, you know, what's planned for week 2 is basically what's going to take place?
Well, basically, it's the majority of the work's undertaken by contractors anyway, so we don't actually do the work. So we're only overseeing the contractors. So we'll go out and they'll have areas which are marked up.
Okay.
I've got one starting in Sutton Coldfield Tunnel. I think it's on the 9th of January, which is quite a big area. But I think they've allowed 12 weekends. So at the minute, they're only preparing all the paperwork for it. But it's basically the first shift they're going to go in and mark the whole tunnel up. And the second week, then they'll go in and they'll have so many teams in it from what I'm hearing, the methodology of what they're going to do. So.
That sounds great. And how do you then evaluate that you sort of think, yes, that work can be completed within 12 weekends, and that what they're proposing, you know, is fair and realistic?
They might put down how much meterage they're going to cover in per shift,
yeah,
and how many gangs are on, and then obviously when we go out, James and myself will look at it and check the quantities of what's been done against it, and then we'll record it and say, yeah, there's so much done, we can sign that bit off, or right, you've still got X amount to do.
Excellent. And again, that's very much linking back then, Kieran. It's your experience, isn't it, of the work. You know what is a realistic output or productivity for a weekend, and from that, you know, you're able to sort of think, yes, 12 weekends is an appropriate length of time. What's your approach to within the work that's required, sort of prioritizing certain activities over others?
It's like I've said in one of the previous tasks, a lot of our work is generic.
Yeah, yep.
Same, mine is the same. It's either tunnels or it's earthworks. You know, it's pretty repetitive.
Yeah.
So it's sometimes some of the questions, when you look at them, we can't really physically answer them, maybe with the answer that you're looking for, because it is repetitive work, and that's where you're trying to your answer, you know.
I think even within that, though, Kieran, you know, what you're describing, although it is repetitive, I think the reality there is you know what the output is, or what's a realistic output. As you say, from a gang of a certain size, you would expect certain meterage. That comes from sort of experience and these projects having been undertaken previously. So that's good. You know, a lot of your judgment is based on that experience and previous records. So that's an important point. I think, you know, the fact that it is repetitive, but you therefore have very, very defined sequences of work that need to be followed. You know, and those defined sequences actually are what in effect feed into the contractor's program. Yeah.
Can I just comment for a second, Andy?
Please do, John.
It's really nice to sit and listen to what Kieran was saying, actually, because in effect, if we'd have been recording what you'd said, you pretty much just met that first outcome with a photograph of the program.
Yeah.
Because you really good explanations, you know how much you're going to get out of your gangs of subbies. And if you were falling behind, you'd speak to your contract manager and say, we're going to need another couple of gangs. If not, we're not going to be ready for the concrete pour on next Thursday or whenever it is. That was perfect. What he was saying was perfect evaluations of why you program. The other thing I was just going to say, when you're doing this, gents, you don't have to be typing everything. You could be running a video camera in your office and explaining or describing why you do that, as Kieran just did. I mean, that pretty much ticked them boxes for me.
Absolutely.
That's where I was. Thanks, Andy. Sorry, I just
no. It's great point. I was very much thinking exactly the same. very, very much so. And I think you touched on something else, Kieran, actually, as well, where you were saying, the answer that we're looking for. Yes, there are potentially certain things, but as long as you cover it within the context in which you work, that's right. This is Network Rail. This is how we do things. That's your process. That's absolutely fine. Yeah, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that process. You know the sequence of activities, you know what is achievable within a time period, and that's basically, it's all marked up, and that's what you're monitoring.
Yeah.
I would also imagine sometimes you might get certain activities that are safety critical, and therefore they take a high priority.
Yeah, the weekend we had one. It was an existing culvert down in Northampton. And basically they had to crash the whole culvert in, excavate the waste, and then backfill it with 6N, compact it, and then put the sleepers back in. That was a critical path the weekend. Now,
brilliant.
That was only I think that was a 30-hour blockade. But by the time the boys get the isolation, and then it comes back handed off. I think they got from, I think it was 2 o'clock in the morning till 9 o'clock Sunday evening. So overall, it seems that big, but then really it's that big.
And that's again, a really, like John was just saying there, Kevin, a really, really good example. Like you say, there's so many factors, isn't it? It's got to be isolated. You've got to make sure that there's no trains on the area of track. All of those procedures are sequential, aren't they?
Yeah.
You don't start work and then put the isolation in later. You has to be isolated. So that's very much your critical path. So it's there. It's just, and again, short narrative. Here's the evidence. Here's some background information on that particular program, that project. Here's the contractor's 12-week program for the other. You've discussed it and you've provided your evidence.
Yeah.
Andy, what's the criteria now for wordage? How many?
None at all for these, James. So NVQs is a little bit different than the standard. It's really just, as long as you cover it, and that I think almost comes back to my earlier point. Sometimes, tell us about the project, but we don't necessarily need to know all of the absolute minutiae. If you've got enough in there and you think, yeah, actually, what I've written covers that criteria, here's my evidence that I've covered it, that's job done. We're not saying you've got to write 1,000 words or whatever. It's if your answer covers the criteria, I think you might have. It's funny. I think you might have frozen on my screen at the moment, Jay. So you're looking very studious there, but I think actually you've just frozen. So I'll just for myself just bring that criteria up. So how do you identify priorities and critical activities? And again, it's sort of your assessment, looking at the work that's to be done. It's your assessment of the subcontractor's program, but you're also checking, aren't you, that you've got that track possession, you've got your isolations in place, you've got everybody mobilized to be able to undertake the works in the relatively short time period that you've got. So you're just sort of talking through those processes. Criteria 1.3, explain methods of confirming programs or operations and schedules. So if we go back, let's use your example there, Kieran. You've got this work being undertaken by a subcontractor that's going to last 12 weekends. How is that sort of discussed and agreed with them?
It's basically what happens is they'll be given the remit of the works or a drawing. And then within that drawing, it'll be highlighted by the asset engineer of all the defects in the tunnel that require works to be done. So then our contractors would look at it and say, right, well, in that area there's 5 square meters or there's 3 square meters throughout the tunnel. So they'll say, right, well, if we've got 2 gangs, we think we can get that done in X amount of time, and basically they'll book what they think's reasonably fit to undertake the works.
Excellent. And is your process then, Kim? Do you just send that information to them, or do you have almost like a pre-start meeting?
We have pre-start meetings. So.
Excellent. So again, you know, they sent the information, you have a pre-start meeting, you sort of then, you know, you'll discuss everything in that meeting. You'll then presumably just confirm with them that, yes, we agree that, you know, that work is going to be done over 12 weekends. These are the dates. Is that, I'm presuming that's then confirmed with them in some form of almost like contractual arrangement?
We don't really get involved that much with it. It's more the scheme project managers, but we were kept in the loop, and they basically, they'll organise it and they'll say, right, well, we've got X amount of weekends booked and we'll go in and we're going to have 2 gangs. But you don't really start seeing the methodology of it until you start getting the paperwork through, which is obviously the CPP, WPP. Then
excellent. Yeah.
A real feel.
And that's again, that's again really good point there, Kieran. That in effect, that all links into your evidence, isn't it? Because, you know, that's the documentation that you're evaluating to check. You know, yes, we agree with the sequence, we agree with the methodology, we agree with the timescale. All of those processes. So, like you say, they'll be sent the information. You'll have a meeting to discuss it. From that meeting will come agreement. You know, I imagine that there's then an email or a letter sent to them, and that's just confirmation that, yes, we agree this project is going to take, this is what's to be done, and this is the timescale for undertaking that project.
Yeah.
Simple as that. Back it up with, as you say, some of your evidence. That's those criteria done. Describe how the planning of work can be undertaken. You know, like you say, it's done by the subcontractors. They're told what's required. You know, they evaluate the work. They based on historic information. You know, they will then be able to ascertain how long it's going to take. You look through their documentation, like you've just been describing, Kieran, and you're basically assessing that, yes, that work is achievable within the timescales available.
Yeah.
So, Sandy, just 1 minute. So that question there that you've done there, is that question format then? Is it going to be in 3 different answers, or can you do that all in one?
So I'll suggest, to be perfectly honest with you, James. So the structure that John's now put in place, if you look at your one file, you'll basically have 1.1. In 1.1, I would just put a very short narrative, but 1.1 is mainly about providing the evidence.
Right.
So in the box alongside, you will just upload your evidence against 1.1.
Yeah.
So that's in tasks, isn't it?
Yes.
What's this unit?
So this is 713, Kieran.
Let's just have a quick look at that then, because
yeah, please do, absolutely.
Let's go to that.
I can see what John was on about. Identify and evaluate the priorities and criteria activities in programme or operational and schedules, and devise a plan on how the work will be undertaken.
Yeah. So the idea, again, hopefully this is very much, and you know, I think we believe it will. It's much more simple for you now, isn't it? Here's the criteria. You know, what's your answer? Just stick it in there, whether it be a written answer or a little short, brief statement linking into the evidence that you're providing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with regards to the evidence, then evidence from 1.3 would be applicable to 1.4 as well. Then theoretically, wouldn't it?
Very much so.
Theoretically you're speaking about both the same things.
Very much so. Yeah. And actually, within that section, generally speaking, that performance area 1. Generally speaking, the evidence that what you're then talking about, you provide the evidence, and that sort of links to all those criteria.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's almost linked. It's here's the question. So here's my explain. Here's my describe, and then you back that up. So as you say, your work package plan, your construction phase plan, if there is programming documentation, agreeing, if there is an email or minutes of a meeting where you're discussing one of those pre-start meeting minutes, that's your evidence of how it's been planned, how it's been agreed.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just opening mine now. Right, so yeah, see that, yeah. So the select attachments to the side then, attaching the evidence base to the bottom stuff as well then? You still want
So
evidence at the bottom?
So that's the change now, James, actually. So that's a really good point you raised. So whereas in the past, you'd just be sticking all your evidence at the bottom, now what we're suggesting is, or what we'd like you to do is just stick it alongside, so you can see exactly that evidence relates specifically to that criteria.
Yeah.
Andy, can I just make a comment now, mate?
Please do, John.
Can everybody see my screen? Can they?
Yeah.
Yeah, great. So this is the box, the first box, the one you're just talking about, the outcome 1.1. And obviously the narrative that you're talking about would be typed in there. Also, you can, if you've got some people prefer to type on Word. You can type this stuff up on Word document if you want, and then cut and paste it into that box. That easily does that. But another way, like Andy just said, is I've just clicked on attach a file and just found a picture that I had on my computer, and just uploaded it beside it. And you can put multiple documents here. And as James was saying further down, if them documents fit that as well, you can attach them again, but you don't have to. What you can say, and I would suggest that you can do, is at the bottom, Andy, where it says evidence. Yes. You can attach some pictures here, and it could be a picture of the program that you could refer to 10 times in these comment boxes without having to put the program in 10 times, because it will sit against this assignment or this assessment.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? That's sort of that we'll find out how it works best for everybody when we're doing this, but rather than say, oh yeah, let's put that program in again and again and again, to me, the image of the program ought to go on that attachment box at the bottom. Then the comments can go in the outcome boxes beside it. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
I just think that might be a little bit neater.
No, again, I very much like that, John. And I suppose that sort of links to our format of an evidence index, doesn't it? So
perfect.
We could say program is EV1, evidence 1.
Yeah.
You just stick your evidence at the bottom and then just reference it in the box to say EV1. Which we know is a program.
Whatever they've called there, because personally I'm not overly keen on having the same index for everybody, because I think James might have something in evidence 1 that Kieran. It's not wrong. So and I know these two gents work for the same company, but other companies might not have all the planning documents that Network Rail obviously have. Yes, so that might just be a informal chat on the way to the building site.
Yes, I think funny enough, when I was saying evidence in that, I was actually meaning everybody builds their own individual. So like you say, if you use a program as evidence 1, if you use a set of RAMs for evidence 2, whatever that structure of the index is,
absolutely, yeah, perfect. All right, mate, thanks for that.
Thank you. No, fantastic input, John. Thank you. So I'll bring. So. Performance criteria area 2 now. So evaluate and assign work to team members and carry out briefings, taking into account their skills, knowledge, experience and workload. So that again is just evidence of what you do. So it's evidence that you've, as Tim's suggestion there, that you've deployed staff, that you've got your site diaries, that you've delivered
or Andy. And
so that one there.
Is this 1.4 still?
Sorry, no.
Can you see your screen again?
I'll just bring your image up there, James. No, so I'd moved on to performance criteria 2. Do you want me to go 1.4 again? Let me just bring. So 1.4 was just really, as I say, it's just you describing how the planning of work can be undertaken.
Yeah.
It's all right, Andy. Your screen's not sharing the.
Oh, sorry. My apologies. I'd clicked on. I think what it is, I'd clicked onto something else. Let me bring that up again. Come out of there. Share screen again. 713. That's what I want.
That's it.
Is that back sharing again?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. So 1.4, James, just picking up on your question there, was describe how the planning of, so how do you plan the work? You know, it's just a narrative, or just an answer that you type into that particular box. And then we're sort of moving on to performance criteria 2. So again, it's evaluate and assign work to team members and carry out briefings. So what you're looking for there is a short narrative on how you assign work, but more the evidence that you have done that. Okay. Whereas what we're now going to get into in 2.2 and 2.3, you're going to actually explain and describe how you do that. So 2.2 is really discussing how do you allocate work to teams fairly. So in your case, most of your work is undertaken by subcontractors.
Yeah.
Yep. So how do you decide which subcontractor gets which contract?
By tender award.
Okay. So absolutely. So you discuss that. Presumably you've got approved contractors on your list.
Yeah, they're pretty much, yeah.
Do you ever get a situation where you might you might allocate work based on they're particularly good at one aspect of a project?
Yeah, generally if it's earthworks, it'll be Murphy's.
Okay. So again, I'm presuming that that's on the basis that they, you know, they're on your list. They've got a proven track record. You know, they're really good at that aspect of the work. Do you ever base projects on location?
Yes, we do, and do performance.
Excellent. So again, you just discussed. I was actually going to come to you, James, and say, you know, that project in Whaley Bridge. I mean, presumably the company that you used to undertake that work were from that area, from that region.
Mainly, yeah. So we look at the bit that area's more north for us, where the South Division is, like, we use a lot of AMCO works and things like that, different contractors.
Brilliant.
They're mainly based in that area. Yeah.
So again, you know, and it is you're basically you're going to be utilising contractors that are on your approved list. So you know, little bit of a discussion around that. Little bit of a discussion that, you know, depending on the type of work, or do you also have size of project may impact on which particular company you use?
No, because they're already on the approved list for us.
Yeah, because James looks after, what's yours, James, up to 50k?
Yeah.
And then mine's from 50k upwards to, well, we've just done one which was a £6 million job.
Yeah. So the £6 million project, Kieran, you're not going to use John Smith and Son, and there's just the two of them, are you? You know,
No.
You know that there's so again, that is a really good illustration that you've got works up to a certain amount. It probably sits with particular types of company. Works of a greater amount, obviously, you know, you'll have a different subcontractor base that you utilize for those works. So, you know, it very much is that size, that experience. I was funny, it's slightly different to your circumstances, but I was having a similar. I was going through this unit recently with a roofing contractor. You know, and I don't know, it's obviously the term Tim widely uses, but, you know, he was talking about they have some of their gangs are what they refer to as house bashers, you know, and they're great at just slating and tiling new houses on new housing estates. But where he has other heritage work, where it's, you know, ornamental lead work and such like, you know, he has certain own certain people that he would utilize for that because of their, you know, skills base, because that's what they specialize in, and they're really, really good at it. So, you know, depending on the type of work that's involved, or as you're saying, like the value of contract, that can actually influence who you actually use to undertake the work. So are you happy there with 2.2 as to how you allocate work to companies?
Yeah.
2.3 then is what methods do you use of briefing team members or briefing your subcontractors about that should be quality. Actually, that's a misprint. It's quality standards, or you know, the levels of work, the quality of work that's required.
Just be standard network rail standards. If it's brickwork, we've got standard network rail standard details for brickwork repairs.
Excellent, excellent. So those are communicated to them. They've probably sent them. Do you ever have to have discussions around that, Kieran? You know, perhaps before a contract starts, that you're reminding of them of those standards, or you might be, you know, you might be carrying out one of your inspections. So we're 4 weeks into that 12 weekly, and you think actually the work that was done weekends 3 to 4 isn't actually quite the standard we're expecting, and you have to.
I had one in Stafford. It's not that long ago. They reinstated an earthwork job and put in the assessed footpath, but it was non-compliant with the standard. Raise the TQ then.
Excellent. So again, you know, you've made them aware of the standards. You know, you're probably briefing on them. But likewise, Kieran, a brilliant example there, where work doesn't meet the standards, you raise a technical query. It might also, presumably, you have non-conformances as well.
We don't. We just basically we just raise it as it's non-compliant.
Okay.
But then from that goes to the project team, and then the contracts will raise a TQ depending on the DPE's response, which was the case. They've sent a TQ through, which was verbally agreed by the designated project engineer for the scheme.
Brilliant, Kieran, and that is an example of, you know, if you use that in your answer and then use the evidence, you know, if you can get some of that project evidence, that fits that perfectly.
Yeah.
Andy, just a quick comment there. What I've done in the past, because obviously it's always a little bit data sensitive sometimes with the GDPR.
Yes,
so
yes.
What I've encouraged some people to do is, rather than upload the actual document, you could just take a photograph of it with your phone.
That's a good point. Yes.
Just attach the image of the document. Because, I mean, to be fair, what they did is they just sort of stuck a post-it note over the name and address and the sensitive data, and just took a photograph of it and explained what it was. And that was a similar situation to what Kieran just said, where someone hadn't done something properly. So he sent me, that was actually an email, and he had an email, done a screenshot of the email, and just blanked out the person's email address who it was sent to.
Yeah,
you know,
perfect.
That's perfect. Yeah. Right, Andy, I'm going to do a little recording in the background. So what I'll leave, but I'll come back sort of as and when.
Perfect.
So,
yeah, absolutely.
If you need me for anything, I'm on my computer. Just ping us an email, and I'll join the group straight back in.
Absolutely, John. Yeah.
Cheers, mate. Thanks.
Thanks very much for your input, John.
Cheers. Thank you.
So, Kieran, James, are you both happy there with performance criteria 2?
Yeah.
Perfect. So looking now at performance criteria 3. So this is basically where you are. So 3.1, carry out checks on progress and quality. So it's actually the doing of it. And again, I know from reading one of your last sets of answers, James, this is very much what you do, isn't it?
Yeah.
In amongst many other things, but you know, as you say, so carrying out checks on progress. So again, that really is just you providing evidence that inspections have taken place. You know, you might, Tim's example there of cube test, you know, there might have been some concrete cube test results that you could utilize. You know, anything really that illustrates that you are checking on progress and quality. it's really just the evidence that you're doing that. Carrying out checks on the quality, so that comes back to what you were just describing, Kieran, wasn't it? You know, where that the work that had been completed was being inspected or was being, you know, evaluated, and actually you thought, you know, this isn't up to standard, and then obviously that instigates those procedures that you've described. So 3.1, 3.2 are carrying out, so that really you're just providing evidence that these checks are taking place.
So Andy, that question 3.1 to 3.4 there, it's all, for what we do is all one question. It just revolves around that one statement. So what we put into one really is number 2, 3, and 4. So you wanted to break it down there, but I'm going to find it hard. It's going to be repetitive in all 4 questions in a lot of these questions. But you've got on the task, you've got boxes for each question. Yeah. But a lot of it's going to be repetitive wording for us. Well, where do we stop? Is it a paragraph? Is it 100 words? Is it 500 word? There's just a lot of boxes for what you want back. Yeah. So that's partly. It's a really good point you made, James. That's why I've produced these documents in this particular format. Okay. So 3.1 and 3.2 are the reason I've not highlighted those in yellow. Those are you providing evidence that you've carried out those checks. So I just need the evidence that checking has taken place. So it's only a very short narrative to say, you know, this is my evidence. This is the inspection documentation. This is a cube test, and that's it for 3.1, 3.2. I just want it's evidence related. Right. So okay. I understand. And so then, as long as you've got that couple of paragraph wording of what it is and the evidence to go with it, everything that's not highlighted in yellow is just basic, like you've just said. This is my evidence. Exactly. For inspections carried out for CMO, But exactly. Where it's highlighted in yellow, you want more you want more narrative. Exactly. Right. And that again, this is very much. Particularly almost in response, I think particularly to yourself and Kieran, James, where I know when Tim, I think my appreciation, when Tim goes through them, I think sometimes I myself think, do I have to write about it or do I have to provide the evidence? So I thought to try to make it easy, the carrying out, that's, isn't it? You just need to provide the evidence that you've done it. Yeah, it's a lot better. Yeah, and then as you rightly say, so what you're then talking about in 3.3 and 3.4, you're just then explaining the process. Yeah, so this is a lot better. Yeah, you're right. It all interlinks. So 3.3, 3.4, you're talking about it, but 3.1 and 3.2, you're providing the evidence that you've done it. Yeah, that's sound. Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah. So 3.3 then is explain the methods of checking progress. So, you know, when you go out and do your inspections, do your quality checks, you know, what is the process? So again, you know, you might visit site once a day, once a week, whatever it is. You might have a meeting. You might have an inspection team that carry out these checks for you and then feed you back reports. Yeah. And again, it is very much what is Network Rail's inspection process. You know, we're not expecting that you cover anything that you in Network Rail don't do. Yeah. And then 3.4, provide feedback to team members on the progress of work and standards of quality. So in truth, actually provide feedback. You're right, really. Again, actually, that's probably more evidence than that'd be our generic daily report. Yeah, report that'd be 3 and 3.4. Exactly, Kieran. That's precisely it. And I very much, you know, I do pick up on. I think, as I say, you get all those. The idea of that is it does all interlink, but it's very much. Here's my explanation, here's my description, and then here's the evidence that I've done it. So actually, I've probably incorrectly highlighted that. That's just the evidence that you've done it. So that might be, as you say, it's an inspection report that's communicated. It might be minutes of meetings. It could be that non-compliance.
That's you providing feedback on the progress and standards of quality. And don't, as I say, don't lose sight. The right-hand column is an important column because Tim has given you suggestions here as to what you can use as evidence or what it is you'll probably talk about. Is that okay for 3?
Yep.
Does that? Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fine.
Brilliant. So performance criteria 4, where it's now looking at 4.1 again, review and supply. So it's criteria that's doing. So review and supply additional support and or resource where requested by team members. So again, I appreciate that the works are carried out by subcontractors. Say, for example, you'd got a subcontractor that perhaps they were falling behind program. Is there a way that, you know, you could, you're requesting extra gangs or bringing in extra labour or extra machinery just to bring back projects on program? Could you have a situation like that, or get them to work longer hours, or get them to work overtime?
No.
No,
not really. No,
No.
they've got
No, we don't.
12-hour rule anyway.
We're there for quality and assurance, and that's what we do. It's
right. Okay.
To how we can manage our supporting contractors.
Okay. So that's an interesting statement, James. So are there times where you feel that, I don't know, they need additional support?
I've lost you, sorry.
So obviously the criteria: review and supply additional support and or resources where requested by team members. So I'm trying to link that criteria in your context. You know, is there a way that you get your subcontractors extra resource or extra time, supply them with materials or equipment, or that presumably is totally down to them?
Well, he's gone.
Yeah. Thinking about yourself, Kieran, again, even may not necessarily link to your current role. You know, like your experience at Dawlish, for example. You know, have there been times where you know, additional support, additional resource has been required? So you know, and you were talking about your formwork and shuttering carpentry. You know, where perhaps a project where you've needed extra labour or extra machinery or extra equipment. You know, just to be brought in. So you know, I think as Tim's suggestion there, plant or overtime requests, or, you know, actually just working slightly. That would be James again. Where's he gone? You're hopefully back there, James.
Yeah, I keep losing signal. It's
that's all right.
What's up with you?
It's Chesterfield for you, isn't it?
Rubbish. Yeah, that's it.
So is that crooked? I think it's that crooked spire, isn't it? It must get in the way of the signal.
Probably is. So 4.1 is a one-liner again, and then 4.2 will explain the different ways of motivating team members to complete. So we could talk about with our TQ system. We have a technical query system and things like that where we support, give them guidance and support. Start all working to standards.
Very much so. Very much so. I was just gonna say, like 4.1. If there is difficulty, that's more just sort of like an evidence. Whereas 4.2 and 4.3, we can sort of just discuss. So
yeah,
you know, explain the different ways of motivate. So how do you motivate your subcontractors to complete on time? Motivation could be actually they are retained on the approved contractor list. You know, that if they perform well, they'll get more work from you. that's a form of motivation. You know, there can be other you know, other forms of motivation that you might utilize. You know, there's good benefits that staff are provided with. I know most of yours relates to the use of subcontractors. So it's how are you motivating your subcontractors to complete the work to the required quality on the required time? Probably is around the fact that, you know, they are retained on your approved contractor list and that they get more work from you. That probably is the greatest motivating factor for them.
Yeah. The performance levels, if they don't perform, we'll give the work to the contractor.
Yeah, and that's highly motivating, isn't it? So you know, that's a quite acceptable answer. You know, that's real life, isn't it? You know, if you don't perform, you don't get the work.
Yeah, that's right.
4.3. So this may be something where perhaps you're having to answer a little bit holistically. So how could you provide, think theoretically perhaps, or draw on, I think just as you lost connection, James, I was just chatting with Kieran about his experience on the doorless seawall project, where 4.3 is about explain ways of providing additional support to team members on ways of getting feedback, and ways of getting feedback on additional support from team members. So, you know, perhaps if work is falling a little bit behind program, it might be that, you know, you need to increase the, you know, bring in an extra gang. On some projects, it might be that you work slightly longer. You know, you put an extra couple of hours on the end of the day, or you might work weekends in other sectors. So, you know, how could you provide additional support to companies?
Well, we don't normally go down that route, and we normally give in the guidance and support. So the only way we're going to give them that is by giving them, where we do progress meetings, or we do safety meetings with the teams or the lads, or give take 5 for safety and things like that. Excellent.
Build your answer around that, James. That's perfect. Again, you know, explain ways of providing additional support. So, you know, within your meetings, you discuss these things. You know, you very much, I like that idea, actually. You know, you can utilize, can't you, where perhaps performance is slipping. So ways that, you know, you discuss improve performance. So like you say, these initiatives, give 5 for safety, you know, they are ways of improving performance and supporting, you know, supporting your subcontractors to achieve the objectives that you want.
Yeah, lessons learned. Yeah,
lessons learned. Excellent. You know, these are the lessons that we've learned on this project that we roll out on the next project. So brilliant.
Yeah.
So okay with that one?
Yes, Dad. And
then so 5, so evaluate poor or unacceptable performance given them. No, again, 5.1, 5.2, these are actual evidence of doing. So, you know, where you've got, you know, your example, Kieran, of a non-conformance or non-compliance, you know, that's a way of doing that. You might have site meeting minutes, inspection reports, again, which illustrate poor performance. Yeah. And then 5.2, implement methods to improve performance. So again, that's where you've got a non-compliance and you expect that work to be redone and re-inspected.
There's going to be lots of evidence, isn't there, on these? An awful lot, unless you're happy using one evidence for like 3 or 4 things.
Yeah, again, and I think that's very much took on board, actually. I think what John said, James, that I think for this you just need, you know, you need work project plans. I think, like you say, examples of some inspection reports, examples of some meetings of minutes, or where non-conformances have been reported. So as it's almost like, right, here's a criteria, what can I provide as evidence of that? But if you've provided evidence for one and you think actually that applies to 2 or 3 others, do put it in the box at the bottom, or wherever you put it, if you give it a number, say evidence 1 is an inspection report, and then you think later on in your one file, as you're going through those boxes, you think, actually, I don't need to put that picture in again. I can just make reference to see evidence 1, see evidence 2. So I think the point we're trying to make is don't keep feeling you have to keep uploading the same evidence over and over again. Just put it in once, give it a number or give it a reference, and then where it's applicable, just use that reference again.
Yeah.
So yeah, make sure you've got sufficient evidence, but you don't need to bombard it with evidence. Just make sure that you've got sufficient to cover that criteria. So I've got examples of, here's a couple of inspection reports, preferably one where there is a non-conformance or something that needs to be improved. I know you were saying, obviously, James, from your sort of QA side of things, I'm sure you've got loads and loads of these. It's just taking 1 or 2 of them and putting them as your evidence.
Yeah. And I keep turning the camera off. I think it's taking the usage up. So that's the reason I'm turning the camera off. Yeah,
quite understand that. Yeah, I know a lot of people adopt that same strategy, James. Yeah, it's sort of bandwidth, isn't it, and such like.
Yeah.
So as I say, it really is there. Just describe the various methods of identifying poor or unacceptable performance. That is very much as part of your inspections, part of the feedback. You're becoming aware of poor performance or poor quality, so you pick that up in your inspections, and then how do you then feed that back to your subcontractors? It's probably going to be in some of the ongoing meetings. It might be a phone call or an email, just saying, I've just inspected this work and it's really poor quality brickwork or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
5.4 is then explaining ways of discussing the causes of poor performance. So if again, let's use your example, Kieran, on that. There was a non-compliance raised. Was that sort of was it discussed with the contractor as to why their performance wasn't?
Basically, what they've done is they, excuse me, instead of referring to the drawing, they matched what was in the existing topography of site.
Right.
And instead of installing what was recommended on the AFC drawings. So what I raised it and said, well, look, you're non-compliant with the design. And their argument was, well, we're matching into the existing. I said, yeah, but it specifies on the drawing the type of footpath that should be in. So
excellent.
I reported it back in our report and sent the email out as well, saying that it was a non-compliant to design. The DPE sent out an email, or the PM sent out an email stating that a TQ needed to be raised. They raised the TQ, and that was formally answered. And what they'd put in, they said, well, now that it's in and the job's complete, we'll accept it.
Perfect, Kieran. And again, that's where, just as I say, within your answer, use that example. Just summarize it though. I don't need chapter and verse. Again, keep emphasizing. Fundamentally, what the contractor did, they built what they thought because of the topography, rather than building to specification. And yeah. How did you discuss that with them? Was that in a formal meeting? Was it on the phone?
No, it was just on the site visit on site. I just spoke to the site manager.
Spoke with them at the time. So again, that's how you do it, isn't it? You're visiting site, you're assessing the work, you're checking it for quality and checking it for being built in accordance with standards. And if it isn't, you discuss it there and then. And as you say, there's then a formal documentary process, isn't there? Like you say, the TQ is raised or the non-performance is raised. And again, by using, that's an example where using an example really covers that criteria, well. And if you've, as I say, if you then have of that particular documentation about that, there's any emails or that non-conformance, John's quite correct. Do if there's any sensitivity, just block things out or such like. But that's perfect evidence of you doing that. Is that okay?
Yeah.
And then the final bit of this one, recognising successful completion. So demonstrate ways of recognising success and praising team members on the completion of work. So again, I don't know, do you have newsletters where perhaps Murphy's have performed particularly well and you recognise that or feed it back?
What's that? The thing we get out, James, and it shows the work that Works Delivery have done?
What, the BMI?
No, you know where...
Oh, no, the performance safety month thing.
Yeah, it shows all the work we've done in business plan and things.
Sounds that again sounds very much like the sort of thinker, where it's anything that just sort of illustrates that work has been completed, and I think work has been completed on time, to standard, in budget, and you might just be praising them for that. So I know some companies have newsletters, also your performance, that you're managing projects that have been completed on time, in budget to the required standards of quality. Six 6.2 again is actually doing so, advising responsible people on the successful completion of work. How do you then advise whoever needs to be advised that work is completed?
We'd basically, what we'd do there is we'd go out and we'd do like a snagging.
Yeah.
Visit.
Yeah.
So if there's no snagging, then we'll just produce the M14s, which is the sign off. Brilliant. So again, that's your the way you cover 6.2, Kevin, is your M14. If that's the sign off. Do you then have to feed back to? Is there any? Who does the M14 go to? That's probably where my question's going. That goes to the SPM and the project manager, the DPE, and then the contractor. And once it's all signed up by the contractor, then it's formally issued then to the road asset manager. Excellent. So again, little bit, and that really, so 6.1, 6.2 is things that so those you just provide the evidence. And then 6.3 is describe the ways. So like you've said, you carry out, work's completed, you carry out your inspection, you carry out your snagging, once it's all signed off. So you're just describing that process, and explain effective methods of advising responsible people of the team members' successes. So presumably you both need to be feeding back to your managers that, this project that I'm running, it's now completed and it's... Yeah, we've got phase gate E and phase gate F with business plan side. We have to go in and update once the jobs are complete. But brilliant. It's an Excel, but you can't really, you might be able to take a screenshot of it, but you wouldn't be able to take evidence from it. Yeah, don't worry about that, Kevin. So again with that one, really, you describe the process. If as I say, if things are sensitive or not available, the fact that you've discussed them, but that literally is 6.3, 6.4. It's really how do you recognise that work is complete, and then how do you just advise people that it has been completed, and that's very much what it's asking. Yeah. And that's that unit. And we've got 3 of these, have we? We have, but I hope the next 2 are shorter units. It's a little bit about personal professional development. It links quite closely back to what you were answering before. So I was going to, should we stop for 15 minutes for tea? Yeah, that'd be good. I'll have a bit of a break. Yeah. And yeah, that's fine. Hopefully, as I say, hopefully now, I think with
you know, I do genuinely believe that I think the structure that John's put in place for the one file, when you start using it and get familiar with it, you'll think, actually, yeah, this is better than it used to be. And hopefully these documents structured, as I say, yellow to answer. The others, it's really just providing the evidence, and that evidence relates to the answer that you're giving in yellow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. It's just how much narrative you want to it. It's whether it's going to be, you know, going to be after a couple hundred words, or do you want more? It's just knowing where to stop.
To be perfectly honest, James, it might even be less than a couple of hundred. It really is. If your answer covers the criteria, and as I say, I think with both of you, as I said earlier, you provide me with lots and lots of really good and interesting background about the projects, but sometimes a lot of that background could almost be cut out. You know, it's just really being short and to the point, really. You know, this is how we do it, this is why we do it, and provide evidence of it. Don't think you have to be overly, you know, they're not word count really. It's just as long as your answer covers the criteria.
Yeah, that's fine. What I'll do is I'll do this one, and then once I've done this one, I'll forward it over on Word, and then look for the feedback from there.
Funny enough, James, you sort of preempted what I was just. It almost is that, you know. I think we're still in the early days, and you know, I appreciate you're probably still trying to get used to what exactly what it is we're looking for. So I think the best way of doing that is you know, as you both do, send over your drafts, and I can, you know, I'll. If it meets the criteria, great, perfect. If not, I'll give you tips as to what else to include.
So, 15 minutes then.
So we'll have 15 minutes. I'll stop the recording for this because, again, we'll upload this later. So you've got this record on one file. So I'll do each unit as a separate recording, and then we've got all three that you can refer back to.
Lovely.
All right. So 10:37. I make 15 minutes from now. So I'll see you back at 10:37.
Okay.
All right. See you in a bit.
Cheers.